Craig and choir. Jan, thank you so much. That was lovely. Just beautiful. Sometimes something unforgettable happens in church. And a young man crashed through the back doors of the sanctuary as I was beginning my sermon, waving his arms and shouting woes to me and the congregation. And a deacon got up from his pew and put his arms around the troubled young man, whispered something in his ear, escorted him back to the narthex, and spent the rest of the service with him. And nobody remembered the sermon that day because they saw one. Sometimes something unforgettable happens in church. And when the first church got started, the early church, two people visited, and one was a person of wealth, stylishly dressed, manicured, polished, put together. The other person, not so much. Poor, disheveled, hair a mess. And the usher made a big fuss over the rich person, offered him the hand of fellowship, showed him a good seat. And to the poor person, the usher said, you're going to have to stand in the back, next to the door, preferably the window. Okay? And someone whose name was James was in the service. And when he went home, he got out his pen and his legal pad, and he started jotting down notes, a little protest letter to the pastor and the church council. And whoever this person was, he didn't like what he saw, and he told them about it. And he describes in harsh detail everything that was going on, making enough good points that his little protest letter ended up in the Bible. And here are a few of the points. In God's eyes, no one is better than anyone else. There are no preferences. Now, you would think that we all know that already, right? But one of the sad, lingering, tragic truths in human history is that people don't believe it, or they don't want to believe it. See, it may appear that God plays favorites. It may appear that someone is better than someone else, but that's not the truth. No, this early Jesus movement was all about the idea of radical human equality, and he made sure that everyone was welcome. In God's eyes, there are no favorites. There are no special privileges. So the second point James makes, and I'll put it in the form of a question. Agree or disagree? Religion is more about how you live than what you say you believe. Okay. Anybody disagree? Afraid to disagree? See, it's an old idea. It goes all the way back to the prophets in Israel who kept insisting, God really doesn't want any more bloody sacrifices. God wants justice in the marketplace. He wants a little bit of kindness and civility as you are members of society. He wants you to be compassionate, maybe a little humble as you deal with your friends and your neighbors. In God's eyes, there are no preferences. Take care of each other. Okay? Now, apparently God wants us to understand the implications of what it is that we believe. And the people who say that religion is just ritual, they've got a big problem. Because in Jesus' day, just keeping all the rituals was full-time work. If you did everything that you were supposed to do, guess what? You didn't have enough time or energy left over to love your neighbor. So agree or disagree. Religion is more about how you live than what you say you believe. Okay. The third point James says is this: religion is primarily not an intellectual exercise. Migrating from one thought to the next, getting things cluttered up in our minds. So I ask you this morning, is religion about getting everything right intellectually? Is religion about understanding everything that you believe? Is religion about saying what you believe in rational statements called creeds? Okay. So how many of you prefer religion as an intellectual exercise? Am I stepping on toes? And how many of you don't want some preacher telling you that you might want to consider religion as feeling as well? Finally, James says, you really don't believe something until it shapes and forms what you do and how you live. Faith without works is dead. So if I look at one of you and I realize you lack clothing or food, and I say to you, go in peace, be warm, eat your full, right? But I don't use any of my resources to make sure that you do have food and clothing, what good is that? Charlie Brown and Linus were trudging through the snow, and the wind is blowing, and they've got their snowsuits on and their gloves and scarves, boots, and they encounter Snoopy standing by his doghouse, shivering, his dish is empty. He's cold. He's hungry. Charlie Brown says, Snoopy, be of good cheer. And Linus echoes that same sentiment. Yes, Snoopy, be of good cheer. And then they march on. And Snoopy has this wonderfully quizzical, sardonic look on his face. And he says, well, that was helpful. Today, a lot of scholars are offering these theological reflections about the practices of faith. And what they're saying is, what is it that we do because of what we believe? And I would add this caveat. What is it that we want to do because of what we believe? A young woman said, my life, I never intended it to work out this way. Somehow I imagined that life would be simpler. And this woman is in her 40s. She's busy all the time. She never has enough time to do the things that she wants to do. All of her friends are in different time zones, but she doesn't have the time and energy to form new friendships. She volunteers when she can, but it's not much because she's so busy, right? She's pretty much exhausted all the time. And she said, this is not the way I thought my life would work out. And this woman is experiencing this deep spiritual hunger that has become almost epidemic in our world today. See, we yearn for something that will help us cope with the demands of our lives. The demands of work and family and relationships and volunteer associations. We yearn for something to help us know that our little lives, our being here on this planet, have amounted to something. And guess what? The church has done a poor job of helping people find that anchor. Truth be told, we are culprits. The church knows the landscape of busyness, and what have we done? We've simply added to the stressors of people's lives. It's taken 7.5 years, but you finally understand. Keith cringes whenever the Personnel and Nominating Committee tries just to fill slots. I told you when I first came, I hate it. And when I see committing people, the chairs run up to a new person that's joined our church, won't you please join our committee, without asking if this person has a gift for this particular ministry. And you want to know why people are burned out from the church? That's exactly why. I tell new members, do not do anything. Rest, relax, in God's Spirit. You will know what you're supposed to do. God will reveal that to you. Be patient and wait. Churches across the United States, where are our young families? Right? Where are the young adults? Why aren't they here? That's the constant refrain that every minister hears. Why aren't young people coming in droves to our congregation? We are the coolest congregation out there. Why aren't they here? Multiple reasons. But one significant reason is the church here, our church, has continued to place burdens on them in unexpected ways. And so I'm asking you, what if this church, what if we let these young people and young adults with families, what if we let them know, hey, this is a place where you can rest and relax, no pressure, no guilt. And what if these young families understood that even as I deal with the demands of this world, I know I'm a part of a community of faith that is a safe haven, whether I attend every Sunday morning or not. It's a problem. And James says, within the church dwells rich and poor, educated, uneducated, powerful, powerless, people who believe, people who don't believe, young people who come in wondering if they're going to continue to sink, and older people who want to encourage them they can make it. Within this congregation, the needs are varied. And what if we were good news to everyone who comes through the doors? Our church exists in part to meet human needs. We take care of food and clothing and shelter, but we also take care of human spiritual needs. What about the person who needs encouragement? What about the person who needs hope and love? We are here to help people find authenticity and meaning and purpose and what is most important in life. We are here to practice our faith, to do what we believe. Will Campbell tells the story of interviewing a man who was a high wire artist, and he wanted to know why the person did what he did. And the man talked about the love of the circus, the applause of the crowd, hurling through the air and in space. But then the man said, "You really want to know why I get up on that high wire every night? I would have quit a long time ago, but my sister is up there, and my mother, and my father, and my sister has more problems than Job, and my wife is a devil-may-care nut, and my father is getting older. If I'm not up there, something bad might happen." And then Will Campbell said, "And why are they up there?" And he said, "Oh, I drink too much." Sometimes we do what we do because we have to, right? Putting food on the table, right? Providing shelter and security for our children, caring for an aging parent, helping and encouraging a friend. And you do know that's a calling, right? So is being responsible. So is taking care of business. So is finishing the job. So is doing things right. Frederick Buechner said, there are all kinds of voices out there. All kinds of voices calling us to particular kinds of work. And our problem is figuring out which is the voice of God and which is the voice of society. And as it relates to work, Buechner said, here is a good rule of thumb. The work that God calls you to do is the kind of work that A, you most need to do, and B, what the world most needs to have done. The work that God calls you to do is where the gladness of your heart meets the deep hunger of the world. Friends, sometimes something unforgettable happens in church. A minister was asked to speak at a conference, and before he spoke, a young woman was asked to deliver the devotional. And as she approached the microphone, the minister noticed a large yellow piece of paper with a lot of writing on it, and he thought, uh-oh, it's going to be a long night. The young woman began to speak softly in a foreign language, and then another language, and then another. On and on it went. Same sentence, 70 different languages. One sentence, spoken more than any other sentence in the entire world. When the young woman got to German and Spanish and French, he recognized the sentence. The last time she spoke the sentence, she said it in English. Mommy, I'm hungry. And then she sat down. Jesus and human need, when they are together, there is the church. Or at least the opportunity to be the church. Faith is something you do. Always. Always. Amen. Be mindful of the